From Acres USA, you are listening to the Acres USA podcast, a conversational podcast where we'll explore sustainable farming, regenerative practices, and the latest innovations in eco-agriculture with some of your favorite farmers and ranchers. I'm your host, Taylor Henry, the owner and CEO of Acres USA. Welcome to the Acres USA podcast. All right, everyone, we're joined with Monte Bottens. Monty has a lot of different hats he wears, but most importantly, he's a fifth-generation Illinois farmer and farms, I think, over 2,000 acres and has carried the generation on with his farming practices. He's doing a lot of cool stuff, and he owns a couple different businesses. We'll have him talk about that. I think the main one, Ag Solutions Network, and then he has a direct-to-consumer business, Grateful Graze. Has a California Ag Solutions business, and hosts the Ag Emerge podcast. So, Monty, welcome to the Acres USA podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Well, Taylor, thanks for visiting today. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to our conversation. Since I had you on the podcast, I figure it's only our podcast only fair to return the favor to you. So,
yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. I was on Monty's podcast, so feel free to go over to the Ag Emerge podcast. We'll drop a link in the episode here for that as well. But Monty, I think I've always been, we've only known each other for 6 months now, but I ran into you at EcoAg this year, and just sometimes you can tell when someone is trying to do stuff a little bit differently, and that was the vibe I got from you at that point. And we've been communicating ever since. So you're heading out to Jason Mock's event that we're doing here in Indiana in a couple weeks. Looking forward to seeing you. But I guess let's get into a little bit of the legacy and how you have continued this fifth generation farm in Illinois.
Well, first off, that EcoAg conference, if you're a listener and you haven't been to the EcoAg conference or you haven't been lately, definitely go. It was actually my first one. I was personally a little scared. I thought, I just may not be appropriate to be hanging out with cool organic people, but it was more than just cool organic people. So there was, all the tribes were there. All of the culprits in the soil health world were there, and it was a great time, great energy. It was really, really fun to see, and a good event. You did a great one on your first one, so keep it up. You've set the bar really high.
Well, I appreciate it.
Well, and speaking of events, that's probably been, I am an event junkie. Now there's some other people who are event junkies too, and you see them all the time. We kind of make the circuits together, but I think it's really important to not only be a seer but a doer, and so I do a lot to go to events, listen to YouTube, social media, talk to other farmers. I'm on ground from, the Mediterranean climate of California to the semi-arid climate of eastern Colorado, western Kansas, to, the humid climate here of the temperate climate of the Corn Belt, through the humid climates, to the southeast. And just get to see lots of variation in crop types, soil formation processes, rainfall amounts, irrigation styles. And just the more you get to see and the more you get away from your own farm, the more you just develop an understanding of how things work, how God designed this all, and how then you understand those fundamental principles of how everything works. Then you can bring it back to your farm and kind of take the best of everywhere and apply it. And that really started when out of college. I started in the equipment business, a Case IH dealership here in Aledo, Illinois. I managed. We were here for 4 years or so, and the economy just was out like this, 8-cent hogs, and we just decided that was enough. We had an opportunity to sell our dealerships to another conglomerate, putting a bunch together, and eventually wound up at another Case IH dealership in California. And that experience, I didn't know how much different agriculture was in California. It was just mind-blowing. I was in Fresno County, which there's over 300 crops grown in Fresno County, and it just was amazing what they were doing. But being a no-tiller from, as they say, back east, seeing the 11, on average, 11 tillage passes between crops. Okay, 11. Now, for the equipment dealer, it was awesome because putting 2,000 hours a year on a tractor was no problem. Okay. So we burnt through tractors and equipment and parts like it was crazy how many dollars would go through a dealership out there. And I just bothered me. I'm like, why are we doing all this? Well, part of it was small seeded plants, require some really fine tillage to get them to germinate. Well, the advent of transplants really helped change that. The irrigation was all gravity when I arrived, and we were just transitioning to drip tape then. And that really changed everything. So the good part about drip tape was is you couldn't do deep tillage because you destroyed your drip tape. So that kind of limited the 36-inch tillage, right? Isn't that crazy to think of that deep?
Yeah, it is.
But so everything was tillage was between the furrows. We're going maybe 12, maybe 18 inches in the furrows and under 10 inches in the beds. So that kind of reduced that. And I saw what we were doing back east, but I saw the technology in California. I thought, boy, there's some great things we're doing at our farm that could apply here, and a lot of things wouldn't. And then I got frustrated by certain companies from the Midwest that were bringing out like combo coulters for row units. Oh, you need to try this. This is great for conservation tillage. And I'm thinking, I know how many stacks of pallets of combo coulters are sitting in sheds in the Corn Belt. They're just regurgitating this old crap that didn't work back east and sending it to a California farmer. And it just made me frustrated. I'm like, there's better technology than that today. Why aren't we using that in California? And so that began the genesis of California Ag Solutions. So um, after that dealership, another situation where it was combined and sold to another one, I said, well, I'm 0 for 2 in this business, so let's try something else. And we started California Ag Solutions, helping farmers reduce tillage and improve yields and reduce inputs all at the same time, both in fertilizer inputs and water inputs, and to dramatically improve yields. So we started with cotton, it was the first crop, and then moved on to tomatoes, then into dairy forages, and then that led to almond trees. And now today we work with probably over 30 crops, all of the major crops from sweet corn, watermelon, cantaloupe, onion, garlic, to walnut, pistachio, almonds, and then all the dairy forage crops. So sorghums, corns, alfalfa, winter wheat, and those kind of things. So it's a lot of fun out there, and we've made a big difference. And now the standard practice in many things is strip till corn. We brought that to California. Cover cropping ahead of processing tomatoes, pretty much a standard practice. A lot of the things that we're doing, we started cover cropping in orchards with no-till drills. So we specially made no-till drills. Now that's becoming a standard practice. So there's a lot of things that we were able to kind of start and get going to help California's farmers improve their soil health, and that's been a lot of fun. Well, as we're going along, we've got grandkids in Illinois and parents in Illinois that were getting older. Ones we wanted to see in school events, and other ones that needed our help some more. So we made the decision about 10 years ago now to come back home to Illinois and get actively involved in the farm again instead of just remotely farming, on the telephone, ordering products and making crop plans and such, um, to being here every day. And that allowed us then to take the products that we developed in California and offer them to farmers in other parts of the country. So we started with, we have dealers now in Montana, Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana. So, and we've done work in Texas, Arizona, Michigan, and those kind of things. So the biologicals and crop nutrition that drives plant phenology and improves soil health. We're doing that with quite a few farmers now. But my day to day is primarily at the farm, and then also a lot with Grateful Graze that you mentioned. That's our direct to consumer business. So we raise grass fed beef, timber raised pork, pasture raised poultry, and also eggs, and then we sell that direct to consumer. And um, learned a lot through that, and it's a real different business because you're working with the consumer instead of with farmers. You're working with other business owners. So today we at the farm we grow all non-GMO corn and non-GMO beans. Half the corn is for feed, half the corn is for food grade milling. On the beans, half of ours is for seed production for other people, and the other half is seed production for ourselves. We started a new brand called EpiYield. So we're got a unique process where we're taking advantage of epigenetics, and where we grow out the first generation and we do some seed separation by density and shape and then replant that. And then we allow farmers to take that technology and apply it to their own farms. So we're trying to, on anything that's a non-hybrid, that it'll adapt to the local conditions. We're growing our seed production in no-till with cover crops and a drill, and then highly separating it for density of the bean. And then we allow the farmer then to do the same thing on their own system. So that way the beans get tailored to their individual needs. It's kind of a fun project we're working on now. And we'll see where that goes, and hope to do the same thing with some cover crop seed too. So we grow triticale for seed. We'll be harvesting that here soon, and sending that out to growers around the country. And it's really interesting. It requires a lot of extra work keeping track of all those things, but it's does some really nice things for soil health. And at the end of the day, that's the foundation for everything. That's why we did what we did in California. That's why we help farmers across the country. That's what we do on our farm. That's what we do with the grass-fed business. It's all about improving soil health long term, because Gabe Brown, one of his saying, he says, questions he asks is, why would we want to sustain a degraded resource? And I think that's a question every farmer listening to this needs to really take to heart. Why do you want to keep doing the same, or why do you want to just keep it as good as it was, when we know 150 years ago, before the plow hit most of the ground, it was significantly better? So why aren't we doing everything possible to improve that soil resource to a regenerated state instead of the degraded state it's in today? So, yeah, that's kind of what we do in a nutshell. Is we focus on the soil, do what's best, and we believe then plant health, animal health, human health, ecosystem health will all fall into place.
So on your specific farm, when did you start getting the turning point on these ideas? Because did you grow up in more of a conventional setting where you guys were doing corn, soy, and then what's the scale of your family farm that you're working on?
Well, growing up, I remember running a moldboard plow, and then pick program in '83 didn't do anything. Right, in '84 we went back to mowing a moldboard plow for a couple of years, but then we went to chisel plow just to save time. That's what it was about, because Dad was working at the dealership, and just to save time. And then we went to only disking ahead of the planter. And then finally, I think it was in 1996 to 98, somewhere in there, we went to no-till. And again, it was just to save time and cost, because back then was really different. You were growing, very low price per bushel crops, and so inputs were really watched. And the first time we went no-till, and I don't know if this really counts, because we had a 15-inch row planter, and we had two coulters per row. So we had a coulter on each side of the row. So by the time you take a coulter essentially every 7.5 inches, an 8-wave coulter, it's kind of like you went full tillage. But eventually, got away from that, went to single disc opener John Deere's mounted on a Case IH planter to band nitrogen, and it just kind of went from there. But it was all about just costs and time savings at first. And then lo and behold, we realized, wow, look at this. We're doing better things to improve the soil, and it's more resilient. I told Dad, I said, it's got better bulk density. He says, no, it's just packed the heck. But we had fun on that, and kind of missed the initial cover crop craze, because I was in California at that time, developing that business. So our farm just kind of stayed on hold with the no-till for about 10, 12 years. And then when I came back is when we really jumped into the cover crop thing, which I've accused the Lesseters at one time of being the cover crop conference instead of the National No-Till Conference, because when you 10 years ago when you went there, that was all they talked about. So, which that's kind of faded a little bit. And I think, um, we started off in more that no-till camp, and it's a zealous camp. We, very focused on no-till versus what's best soil health. So I'm kind of having to unprogram myself, and I'm thinking about some intermittent tillage here and there. I would really like to get to organic. I would love the organic to be no-till, and I've done a lot of exploring in that, and I've come to the conclusion of that's really extraordinarily tough. So it might be easier to write books about, make movies about, but to actually do it is seems to be ridiculously hard. So I'm reaching a crossroads on our farm of what is the least worst thing for us to do. I always like to think of it that what's the least worst, because any of the options are terrible. Tillage is terrible. Chemicals are terrible. There's nothing good inherently about either one of those. Let's just get that out of our heads. But which one is the least worst? And I think there's some times where tillage is the least worst, and other times when chemicals are the least worst. The reality is, and my latest spent too much time in the tractor cab this spring, is you're sitting there thinking, well, why are we even doing annual crops at all? How could we get to total permanent crops and get the food that we need? So, um, then you're sitting there looking at a grain setup and all your equipment, thinking, "Oh boy, that's a stretch." So, um, then yeah, but just things like that, I think about is how do we make the least impact, negative impact in what we do.
Is your family still involved? Like your siblings still involved with the farm?
I am an only child, so that makes that a lot easier getting along with my brothers and sisters. I
Yeah.
guess mom and dad said when they saw me, they said, "Ooh, that's enough." But dad is still actively involved. Dad is he's a 1946 model, so he's coming up on his 79th birthday. And last night at 6:30, when I was getting ready to leave, I had been working on some orders at Grateful Grays. I come out and there he is. He's underneath the side dress bar, putting a hydraulic pump up underneath. I didn't even know he was doing that, but he's just going every day. No one can believe he's 78. He looks like he's 58. So he loves doing that. All the day to day decisions, though, he's happy to let me have to do that. So that's a lot of fun. So
Well, that's pretty unique in itself. When did that start? Just to have your dad start listening to you is pretty unique in this industry.
yeah, that's a really good point, and we've talked about that a few times with different guests on our podcast. But there's a lot of we like to say there's a lot of 60-year-olds that are you know never made a decision when dad dies and don't know what to do at the farm. Um, it's a problem out there in ag in general, but my dad is a unique individual, and agronomy thing really wasn't his thing, and he could tell I it was mine. He's like, so when I was in college, I sold seed corn to help pay tuition, and I was looking into agronomy type stuff at on the side because I went to liberal arts college of all things. So that's how I got my agra portion of my business degree. But it, he says, why don't you just make all the decisions on the inputs? I'm like, okay. So I just did and always have. So I just think that's a real blessing there. So if you're a dad and you're listening to this podcast, let it go. What's the worst thing he's going to do? Make a mistake. Well, guess what? You can make a mistake just as well. So let the son or daughter make decisions. And that's how they're going to learn. That's how you're going to build a family resilience in your farm is if you let them learn. And if you're just telling them what to do all the time and you wonder why aren't they engaged in the farm? Why are they wanting to work more off farm? Why don't they want to come back to the farm? Well, that's probably one of the reasons. So, um, if you're
Do
a
you think that
frustrated son or daughter, have the conversation. Say, hey, you know what? I want to learn more. I want to teach more. I want to have more responsibility, more decisions. What's one thing, just one thing, that I could do more for you? But don't get in an argument and say, "Hey, Dad, you don't let me do anything." That's going to accomplish nothing. But ask for something. So anyway, go ahead, Taylor. I'm sorry.
No, I mean that's a really good point. I think it is such a problem. Do you think your dad had that same relationship with his dad? I mean, you guys have been 5 generations.
So I don't know how that was. They were because they farmed down around Beardstown, about 2 hours south of us, and he moved up to the farm when I was 5 to where we are today when I was 5 years old. So I didn't see that interaction,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm guessing it's they had a dairy, and they had hogs and chickens and the whole works. So he was one of 4 boys, and I think it was basically a lot of people were involved because just stuff had to get done. Dairy don't rest. So as far as decision making, I have to ask him about that. You know, um,
Yeah.
that's a good
Well,
question.
it's a unique this is a unique thing as far as passing on the next generation. Do you have kids that are coming up?
Does it have to be a unique thing?
What?
Why is it a unique thing? How do we
I
make
don't know why it's a.
how do we
I don't.
make
I
that
think it's
not
a.
unique?
I'm assuming it's something to do with the psychology of folks who do this, and I think it's a lot of scar tissue from having painful years, and maybe they don't. It's either two things, like maybe they don't want their kid to feel that because there's just a lot of risk. They've been stressed for a long time. They've had a lot of rough years. Maybe they've had some good years, and then like the more disturbing psychology would be, they don't want to see someone do better than what they did. Like, one of it's like, well, you're going to tell me that I did something wrong for 40 years, and a lot of the scar tissue and pain was I could have been doing this the whole time, and you were the one that figured it out. I mean, I've definitely seen situations like that where I think that is the thing. I don't know. But what was the conversation when you're like, hey, Dad, I'm going to start grass finishing beef, and did you transition any crop fields into grass?
So talked about that, and he says, "Hey, that's great. If you want to do that, you do that. I have had livestock when I was younger. I don't want to have any more livestock, but they're yours. You can do whatever you want." So that was the conversation right there. And I told him I wanted to incorporate on cover crop ground. He's like, "Yeah, that's fine. The cover crops are out there anyway. They can eat them." And you know, he's like, I said they should improve the soil. I'm like, okay, just go ahead and graze them. You know, but yeah, I purchased all the fencing and all that jazz, and went
Yeah.
from there. But
I mean,
plus,
that might be part of it too, where somebody's just got to go out and stick their own skin out. Sometimes a kid kind of rides the coattails forever and doesn't ever go out and take any risks of himself. So like maybe the parent looks back and is like, well, I'm the one taking all the risk here. So that could be part of it too.
well, let's talk about crawl, walk, run. Right? I'm sure you've heard of that before, and others have. But here's how we did, our beef business. Because remember, well, I had 3 brown Swiss bucket calves when I was in 4-H, maybe about when I was maybe 7 years old. Okay. So my cattle knowledge was extensive. I didn't know a thing, and when I did this, so I had some cover crop out there. I'd planted triticale on 20 acres, and I called up a neighbor. I said, "Hey, Daryl, um, I've got 20 acres of this cover crop that if you just let me borrow some of your cows, I'll graze them for you. Won't charge you a thing, you know." He's like, and I didn't know at the time. I thought that was a big ask, and to the cattleman, he's like, "Free feed. You're going to take care of them? I'll bring them tomorrow." For him, it was a win. But for me, I was learning, right? So learned how to get the materials and how do you step in a post, how do you run a reel, just day one stuff. And how do you do water and how do you haul water, and just lots of stuff I was learning. And um didn't kill any, okay, didn't lose any. So That was success. So then we decided, well, why don't we buy 18 steers? Herefords are good on grass. Whatever, neighbors got some Herefords. So we bought 18 Hereford steers. Terrible decision, but we got them. And made great hamburger. But the thing, sorry to the Hereford people out there, but he was a show cattle, and I didn't know he, breeding for genetics and show cattle. Here we are on grass fed. That might as well be giraffes and elephants, And so anyway, we're out there working with them, and that's working. We're about to slaughter them, and then I was in talks with Gabe Brown. I said, this is working. So we purchased Gabe Brown's British White herd. And so brought in a semi load that had all his British White cows, his 1-year-olds and his 2-year-olds. And so we had some that were ready to process somewhat soon next year and started calving and such. So we just learned that way. Then we got bulls and then started learning about groups and just kind of a little bit at a time. And now we're purchasing in feeders in addition to, cows and just a lot more complexity in what we do. But we got 250 head now, and we're just trying to match our market because everything's direct marketed. So that's it. Just if you're looking to start at this, nobody says you have to go buy animals. No one says you have to buy land. I mean, Taylor is pre-conversation here is so excited about goats. He thinks they're amazing. He can't wait to get goats. And okay, that's just a joke. And
Not true.
so, go find the scrubbiest ground you can get that somebody kind of wants cleaned up, but they don't want to pay the money to the land improvement people. Get yourself 20 goats, okay, and some collars, or go borrow the neighbor's cows and feed them for them. I mean, there's simple ways to start. The only thing we have is, like my dad says, is the compaction layer between our ears. That's the hardest thing we have to get through, and I think that's important to be willing to try. And if you're doing what everybody else is doing in the commodity world, well, guess what? They've got millions of dollars of assets underneath of them, amazing amounts of working capital that they've accomplished over generations to be able to do what they're doing commodity farming. Okay. Don't compete. You will get smoked. Go do stuff that nobody else is willing to do. Build up your capital and your working capital and assets, and then you can get to higher, larger scale businesses.
Hey everybody, hope your spring and summer is going well for you. We have 2 summer events that we want to make sure that we talk about. Number 1, June 21st in Gaston, Indiana at Jason Mock's farm. John Kemp, Gary Zimmer, Jason Mock will be speaking at our first annual Farm Weird on Farm event. It is June 21st, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Half the day will be presentations, and then the other half of the day we'll get out in the field and actually see a live harvest, see some of Jason's relay cropping, in-crop grazing, perennial systems. Jason's got a really incredible farm, and we're excited to be out there. The other event is July 11th, and is our second annual Viroqua on Farm event. It'll be in Viroqua, Wisconsin, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Our speakers for that are Will Winter, Steve Campbell, Gary Zimmer, and Brian Dotery from Understanding Ag. And this one we will talk about livestock, regenerative grazing techniques, holistic animal health, and grazing economics. Head to the description. We'll have links for both events in there, and we hope to see you at one of these events this summer. So I got asking for advice partially. I'm in this situation right now with cattle where, we really we're understocked. We've acquired more farms than we have for cattle through agreements, leases. But they are so dang expensive right now. Part of me is like, you just need to be patient and, allow your herd to grow more naturally. But what would you do right now if you were in a position where you kind of needed a lot of cattle? You said you were buying some feeders still, but what is the process you guys are going through to adjust to these prices right now?
So this is just a little tip for everybody listening. First off, remember advice is worth what you pay for it. So, okay, so free advice right here, Taylor, is worth what you paid for it. Okay, same thing. You're watching YouTube channel, all these YouTube stars or whatever. Remember, they have no vested interest in your farm. Okay, they have vested interest in making videos that get lots of watches so that they can get paid. So the more outrageous they are or quirky they are, the more watches they'll get, which may not be what's the best for your farm. So always beware of that. Now, as far as you have more land than cattle right now, is what you're saying, correct?
Yeah.
So, are you in the cattle business or are you in the beef business?
Well, I'm kind of in between those roads too. I started in the beef business,
Okay.
where we bought stockers and then we would sell the meat. But
No, no.
through that,
Okay. Yep.
when I would buy a group of stockers, we'd always buy, usually there would be some heifers and steers. So whatever heifers did well, we kept back, and now we have a pretty good group of cows that are calving on our home farm. And our home farm, we're properly stocked right now.
So, do you process all the cattle that you raise to sell direct, or do you sell some
Yeah.
at the auction barn?
No, I would just sell them direct to consumer.
Okay.
Unless you needed to. Like a couple of years ago, we did try to scale up a couple of years ago, and we had hit with a drought bad, and I did sell back to the sales barn and took a beating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, if you had more cattle, could you sell more beef direct to consumer?
Yeah.
Okay. So all you have is an animal problem at the moment, right? Now, do you have a steak problem, a roast problem, or a burger problem? Which one are you short on supply of?
Well, we actually only sell halves and wholes,
Oh,
quarters.
okay. So you keep life simple. That's great. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll like, we'll slaughter 2 animals a year. One will be for our freezer, and one will be just for small sales, like to our Airbnbs
Hmm.
and people who want to buy, little bundles. But that really hasn't taken off that much. Part of the problem is, sometimes we're out, and that turns people away. Obviously, half of that, if you want to do this direct to consumer, bundle side of the business, I don't think you can run out.
I agree with you there. You don't want to run out because then the customer goes somewhere else looking for it, and they may not come
Yeah.
back. So, um, so you're looking to buy a couple more head, and where to get that? I think there's, you know,
Well, I'm just stuck in between. It's like, do you just let your herd grow out naturally,
Mhm.
and then in 5 years you're going to be sitting good, and we'll be able to, because at some point it'd be nice. Like our home farm, this will be where we winter and probably calve, and then from there they should be, we could start dispersing when we actually get the numbers up there. Um,
How's your hay costs where you're at?
it was great last year, but 2 years ago it was bad.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think land costs where you're at and hay costs are probably a little better than where we're at.
That's for sure.
Our model really doesn't justify cow calf. However, I have them. I think long term, I'm looking to transition to buying feeders. So this year, I bought a truckload of feeders out of South Dakota. So I bought them in the first of the year and actually hay fed them on lot, on a dry lot up there, not dry lot, a dry pasture up there until my cover crops were ready on April 15th. Then we hauled them from South Dakota to our cover crops, and now they're on our perennials at the moment. And that was a way to get it. And they were, Steve Taylor had uh, I'm sorry, his predecessor had evaluated the herd. Steve had seen him actually the day before he came to evaluate our herd, which was the day before he did the podcast with you. And
Oh, Steve Campbell, you mean?
yeah, Steve Campbell, Taylor made cattle. Sorry,
Yep.
Steve
Yep.
Campbell. Sorry about that, Steve. And anyway, he was familiar with the herd, and so what I did is I bought a truckload, 80 of them, and brought them, and then another friend of mine bought 25 of them. So I think that's
Well,
a
you
way to
didn't
go.
call your other friend.
Well, I'm sorry, very sorry. So now,
Because that's what I need. Because my scale isn't to where I can
right.
bring. I don't have like where I can go buy. I mean, we probably have enough grass where we could actually buy
So I
most of that, but
I think if you're going to do it, that's the way to do it. Is we just put together a group order, right? And
Yeah.
you go to a producer out in the plains, and that is grass fed and wants to be grass fed. He wants to sell them this way. I'm giving him feedback on them and such. So I think we do that where two, three, four producers go together and say, hey, let's get a load and make that happen. So
And especially if Steve gets his eyes on him and he approves,
yeah.
because he shot me down yesterday. I texted him a group I was looking at and said nope.
Well, that he saved you a bunch of money. See,
I know he's awesome. I am
what a
he's
what a
too kind.
what a mind, what an eye. But and we're doing the apple cider vinegar thing too. And I got to laugh about
Okay.
apple cider vinegar. I mean, you feed it to cows; it's great for that. You drink it yourself; it's great for cancer and everything else. Your blood sugar. The list of claims of apple cider vinegar. The next thing you know, you'd be like, oh yeah, you got a dead battery in your car, apple cider vinegar. You got a flat tire, apple cider vinegar. That's kind of seems to be the go to
Yeah.
for everything.
Well, I'll do a little shameless plug. Steve is one of the speakers at our event here on my farm, July 11th. I don't know if you're able to come up to that, but Steve and Will Winter and Gary Zimmer.
Oh,
What are you doing with?
that'll be a tough thing to get a word in edgewise with those three. Oh my goodness.
I know, but I love that group because obviously Gary can talk forever about mineralizing the soil. You know, Will's gonna talk about mineralizing your cattle, and then Steve's gonna talk about the right breed and the right type of animal.
Well, I paid for him to come today to our farm, and it's an investment. But oh wow, what a learning opportunity! So if you folks have a chance to go to Taylor's Field Day and hear Steve, it's definitely a lot cheaper than bringing him to your farm, and you don't feel bad when you leave because he's picking on somebody else's animals instead of yours. See,
Yeah, he's gonna come tear him apart. He already tore him apart once, but it'll be good for everyone else to
yeah,
watch
that's
that.
good. That's good. So you all can come see Taylor crying in the corner and what's what's happening there, and you don't have to pay much to do it. So
I think Steve is one of those guys. I mean, he is well known, but then sometimes you ask someone if they heard of him, they haven't, and he's a guy that his information is incredible.
yeah.
What are you doing with the apple cider vinegar right now? Because like we've transitioned obviously into summer grazing, and it is a little bit more of a pain in the ass as far as I like using smaller tanks, but you can't just dump it in those smaller tanks now. Will told me to get this like injector thing. What are you guys doing in the summer here now?
So currently, because we have larger troughs, we're dumping in directly. But so on our farm, I never ever allow herbicides to touch untreated water. So one of the products we create at ASN is called Burnout, and we inject it in the water as it's refilling the tank. So we have a 6,000-gallon tank of water that's treated with Burnout all the time. So it's 5.2 pH, doesn't grow algae, yada yada. So that same concept I'm going to take and put on our well. So the outlet on the well booster pump that goes to the ranch, put a dosatron right there, and then the apple cider vinegar tote next to it. Then we'll constantly inject at so much dilution as it's going out to the field. Now it works great, just can't have metal pipes. Okay. So we've got some metal inside of one of our water troughs that holds the float in place, and it rusts it real quick. Like so, you have to be aware of that. But we are set with all buried poly on the ranch. So I would recommend it that way if you're doing that. Now, if you don't want to
Yeah,
inject it to your
dosatron.
whole ranch, the other thing we've got is we got a little tiny UT or quad trailer, okay, and we put a tote on it. In that tote, you could have your apple cider vinegar in and a dosatron mounted to it, and you take your water turnout and you hook it up, and it comes into your dosatron, and out of the dosatron goes to whatever hose you're going to your water tank, and then that
Yeah.
way you can have it on wheels. You can move from place to place, and go from there. Now, I know they say it doesn't need it, but I'd sure like to keep that tote covered out in the sunlight. Enzymes do not like UV, so anything you can do to protect enzymes with shade or a covering on that tote somehow would be a great benefit.
Yeah, that's a good. So those dosatrons, like as I'm picturing, I would just hook it up next to our hydrant essentially and just run it into the lines that we're feeding at that
Mm-hmm.
time.
Yep. And the
Yeah.
nice part is Dosatron doesn't require any power. It just uses the water pressure to inject, and you can go from one. Different models have different sizes, but 1 part per 1% to 1/100%. So,
So have you been talking to guys like Steve? What's your mineral program like?
so Steve and I are a little different on that program. I've been with Advanced Biological Concepts out of Osco, Illinois, for quite some time. So Heffler, and I think I don't know all the history there, but I think someone from there went and started Free Choice Enterprises, or vice versa. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same thing. It's 12 different minerals on a sled, and they can pick and choose. And it just, by observation, farmer science here, it definitely works, because we move from cover crops to perennial grass, and they instantly change what they're eating. We get a frost, they instantly change. If we get a wet spell or whatever, I mean, the consumption of minerals instantly changes. And I know Steve and I had talked a little bit. He's worried about heavy metals in those minerals and such. Um,
Rice
when
hulls
I
is
No rice hulls that I'm aware of in there. It's all
yeah.
organic. It's organic certified product from ABC. It's tested for heavy metals as it is, and I talked to them about that, and they said, "No, it's just not a thing." So now maybe Free Choice Enterprises dominates this industry. I believe the ABC is probably 1%, and Free Choice is 99%. So that could be a
Yeah, and
there.
they're right down the road from us, so
Yeah,
that's what we've been using too.
yeah.
But we
Well,
did
same
get
thing. I'm 10 miles from ABC, so there you go.
yeah, we did get we're gonna test out. Will had developed a mixture, a mineral mixture in a bag that they said that they've been starting to use because he had problems with those guys at Thousand Hills adopting the multi mineral
Well,
option just because
yeah, I can
people
see
wouldn't
that.
just keep up on it,
Yeah,
which
if
is
you
a
don't keep them
problem.
filled, then that is a problem. They'll overeat one, but I, I've worked on some designs to make this more user friendly. Um, the sleds are kind of a pain. They don't move well. They don't hold a lot. So I've been working on some things that, when I'm happy with everything but the cover. Okay, we get it done. We'll share out the design of what we're doing to where you can have somewhat off the shelf parts and get going.
Yeah, that'll be good. I would look forward to that. What are you guys using for water? And are you moving? Are you trying to move daily, or are you using? Are you on like a? Do you vary your rotations?
Daily, we got sleds. Right now, the herd's together, just because I have lots of grass and I'm trying to move across it fast. We are calving at the moment. Seems like we get 1 to 2 calves a day, and we are currently not back fencing. The herd is trained well enough that they just don't like to go backwards. So we'll keep the water in the previous day's paddock. So they'll walk back to drink and then come back up to the fresh paddock. Um, Doing about 5 acres a day right now. Um, and then
My rule on that, because we do that too. Like we don't. I think the first year I did, I tried getting water in every paddock and then back fencing. That ends up being kind of a pain. And really, when you do watch them, they spend all kind of a pain. And really, when they'll walk back, get a drink, and head right back. 5 to 7 days.
now I don't. You just got to watch for the regrowth. If they're going back on
Right.
regrowth, then fine. But our lanes are essentially, we're 5 days on a lane and we swap over. So then we have a hard set. But I try to leave it to where the calves can be back and mom can go find them and such. Otherwise, if you're doing back fence and calves, you can have some nightmares as far as losing calves, and that's not good.
Yeah, we definitely keep we actually turn our internal fences off during calving,
Oh, okay.
just
Our
because
our
it
internal
was
fences are high enough; they're just single wire that
yeah,
they walk under.
yeah,
We have 2-wire perimeter.
2-wire perimeter.
Mm-hmm.
What do you put on like road perimeter?
2.
2 high tensile.
Yep.
That it is ballsy.
Hey,
Dirt roads or highways?
highways. Highways will do
Oh,
2. Dirt roads on temporary on highways. Highways will do 2. Dirt,
yeah.
all the surrounding, not on farmland when we have baby calves because we're start calving May 15th. So we typically have come off of farmland to plant, and they're on the permanent pasture then. So it's 2-wire everywhere there.
How are you integrating the hogs and chickens into with the cattle? Are you moving through some of the same paddocks? Are you how do you how do you work with the hogs and chickens?
So our chickens, we'll start with that, are all on Cobb Creek design shelters. So the 20 by 36 mobile houses made by Polytex. And one of the problems with them is you have to be on flat ground or flatter ground. You can't have hills to it. So we wind up the broilers, moving them. They take maybe an acre per batch, um, based on the amount of time that they're out there. So we'll move them a half a barn length at the very beginning few days, and then we'll go to full barn length. And then the last week, we'll do 2 barn lengths a day. And then, so they're typically on the flats, and they're just wherever. I mean, the cattle move way too fast
Yeah.
for the broilers.
Yeah, my initial idea of this beautiful system that you'd follow, the hogs and the chickens behind the cattle,
With the
that does
rainbows and the
seem
unicorns and the
yeah, that seems
butterflies.
impossible.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, it is impossible. Now, our hen barn is currently one of these mobile um, houses too. And if I were going to do it again, I would do the mobile hen house style. It's on its own frame, wheels. So either that or like what McIntyre has built out in Idaho is amazing. Um, then you can move more distance. You have onboard water supply. You don't have to have an umbilical cord for it, and you've got a feed supply that can last for a week on there. And you can go across terrain with it. So when I go through a valley, I am tweaking the frame on there, so I don't take my layer barn through places that I should take it. Now, the layers don't have near the impact of the fertilizer for the grass like the broilers do. But what they do have is that going through, and they are the nature's manure spreader, man. It is amazing what they can do to a cow pie. But if I had it on a wagon gear, and then I just pull it right behind the cattle. The only thing is the only range, realistically, the only range 300 feet from that barn. And our paddocks are bigger than that. So if you really wanted to spread all your manure, you'd need probably 3 of those barns per by the herd of cattle. As far as the pigs go, at the home ranch there, it is 226 acres, of which 80 of that is timber. So we've been fencing into timber. So like, fingers, and on the top part where it's a little bit flat is where we put the feeder in the water. And then we take the high tensile wire down the hill, fence them from the creek or the water draw, and we'll give them a half-acre paddock. Now, what the right ratio there seems to be is 2 tons of feed for half acre is about the right balance, unless we get a whole bunch of rain. So then they've grubbed down all of the grass and trees, shrubs, pretty hard. In the same time, they run out of 2 tons of feed. So if you've got 25 head or if you got 100 head, it's all about that same impact. And then once they get to be about 200 pounds, we'll take them out on single wire poly. So I've had no problems with single wire poly unless the cattle are adjacent to them. And there's pigs are so curious. I they will take the shock, go through the poly wire to go chase the cows. It is quite the entertaining show. So anyway,
That's that's
we're
interesting. I haven't had that, but
well, we had one, and then we were only 5 days away from freezer camp, so we just helped her stay in the hog cart for a few days and before she went to freezer camp, and that's how we solved that problem. But now we will intentionally not be adjacent to the hogs just because of um, that curiosity that they have. So
Because then the
down
cattle probably walk up and stare at them, and
cattle just kind of ignore them, but the pigs are like, "Ooh, hey, what's this? Let's go." They
yeah.
want to see me, but I mean, they'll just take a hit of a 8,000 volt and just go through it. Now, um, some other fun things about pigs on timber versus pasture. Okay, when you give pigs new feed, what do they typically do, Taylor? Do they ignore the feeder, or do they go right to the feeder when you give them new feed?
Hey there. Did you attend our EcoEgg conference this year in Madison, Wisconsin? Well, if you didn't, or if you did, we've got the recordings now available. Get on-demand access to every session with the EcoEgg recordings. Learn directly from the pioneers of soil health, livestock integration, and profitable regenerative systems, all at your own pace. Speakers include Gabe Brown, Alan Williams, John Kemp, Joel Salatin, and a lot more. We also have additional products that include the full-day workshops done by Matt Powers, John Kemp, Nigel Palmer, Jordan Green, Mark Shepard, and Austin Unruh. These workshops are in depth and will help you dig deep on the presenters' topics. Grab your recordings now at conference.eco-ag.com/24 recordings or find the link in the notes. Because the best investment you can make is in your own knowledge. Now back to the show. Well, they eat it, yeah.
Well, we found that when we fill our feeders and move them to a new paddock, they'll go forage almost for 2 hours in the new paddock.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
Looking for
We've seen that
acorns,
too.
looking for
Yeah,
walnuts, hickories, and them suckers eating hickories. Oh man, I can't.
yeah.
The sound they make blows your mind. But um, it's cool in there. There's nice breeze. It's wonderful to see pigs being pigs. If
It is
you
where they're meant to be for
if you
sure.
go into a CAFO, and really everyone needs to do this more than once in their life just to fully appreciate it. You go into a CAFO and you say everything is right about this, you really need to have your head examined. There is nothing right about that. The air quality, both from noxious odors and dust, walking on concrete all your life, no grounding, the feed issues, you got to cut their tails, otherwise they'll eat it. The constant stress and squealing, you don't get any of that on pasture. So now, is the CAFO model the absolute cheapest way to do things? Absolutely. Is it probably what's the least best for the animal welfare? Probably. So, um, your hate mail can come to 601 Southeast 19th Avenue, Aledo, Illinois.
But that's the way you get the $3 a pound at Costco
Bacon.
pork loin.
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah, there you go.
yeah,
But we
it's
raise all Berks. The flavor is it's red meat. It's fatty. It is just out of this world. So,
and then where do you source? You source a new group every year. Or you guys actually?
we source feeders right now, and that is frustrating beyond belief. So,
Yeah,
working
it's
with
challenging.
a friend of mine that has a hog operation and has a old farrowing barn that they used to use for their show pigs, and trying to talk him into being a Berkshire feeder provider for a whole, again, just like the cattle thing. Why don't five of us go together and support one person that breed for us? That's got
100%.
facilities. And then, you know what? In May, the spring litters come to you, and everywhere, anybody north of whatever I-74, and then the winter litters all go south.
Yeah,
And that's how you solve these things, I think.
yeah, I agree. Well, count me in on the cattle and pigs for that because
Okay, we got
I worked with.
got you down for 80 feeders and 200 feeder pigs. Got it.
Well, that's my next question. I need to find where do you sell
You need
all
more
these pigs in?
freezers.
Well,
Well, we sell them a package of bacon at a time, and
yeah.
a
So you
pound,
do individual cuts, or how much of this is
all
whole or
individual,
halves?
all individual cut. We just started doing quarters and halves this year, for the heck of it.
Yeah.
because it's a lot less work. And if anybody, if I tell you what, I'm going to pick on you, Gabe. Hopefully he's not listening. But Gabe in 2016 he gave his presentation showing all the organic matter changes and the difference in the color of the egg and everything he had going on when he kind of started his tour pre-understanding ag. I fell for a hook, line, and sinker, and I went to North Dakota to go to his farm to check it out, and it's real. Okay, it's really real what he's doing with this soil, and it's unbelievably amazing. And then the follow up presentation was about how we direct market, and it had a lot of napkin math about this cow's worth this, and a sow has this many, and you get this much, and the entrepreneur in me looked at that and like, wow, there's some money to be made in this. That part of the presentation, napkin math, there's a lot of expenses that go into freezer trucks, freezers, employees, boxes, processing, and your cash, how long it takes to get the cash back out of it. It is the direct marketing at scale by the cut is not for the faint at heart. Pre-sold quarters, brilliant.
Yeah. I essentially,
You got a great processor where you're at too at Nordic.
yeah.
They
Well,
do some really good work. There's cattle from here that go up to Nordic actually.
yeah, I'm happy with them.
Yeah.
As long as they don't do something weird to
Yeah.
orders, which is
Okay, cut
but I
that
think
out
you're
of the
gonna get that everywhere.
podcast. Nobody heard what I said, the name, so that they get flooded with orders, right? But no, I'm turning in. Everybody talks about there's not processor space. No, there's not. You're just didn't call in time. Okay, so I'm sending in. I know what my numbers are when I'm going to process next year. I've
Yeah.
got my numbers in for 26. No problem. They'll take it.
Yeah.
You
And they're
can't you
these guys
can't just
are
call up on Friday hoping to get a slot on Monday.
yeah. These guys are 7 miles down the road from me. I can literally take a back road with my janky trailer to get stuff there.
So I've
It's
thought
a good
about
deal.
going there with them. So that's why my one of our team members, he has some grass fed beef, and he sent him up there to Nordic. So
Yeah, I think. Well, I think it's important, especially if you're doing the direct-to-consumer stuff. That cryovac sealed packaging is half the battle with your processor.
mhm. Hey, I want to something that you need to look into another podcast. But did you see one of the reports lately? Of what one of the things is? It has the highest amount of microplastics in it.
No,
Grass
the
fed.
cryovac grass-fed. Why?
I don't know. I don't know why, but you got the cryovac packaging. That's one thing. Look at what the
But wouldn't then
look at
all
what the
meat have that?
USDA requires for cutting surfaces. You ever been in the back of a processing house and seen how deep the cuts are into the plastic
Yeah,
cutting
yeah,
board?
that's true. Yeah,
We're putting plastics in it all the time. So, but I think more is grass-fed beef because that's more direct to consumer on smaller operations. And I don't know if IBP or those guys have a better way to keep it out of the meat, but that's something that needs to be addressed.
yeah. No, I did not see that. That's not good.
Nope, nope. We just need to be ready for it. It's not one of those
So
things where it's like glyphosate. You stick your head in the sand and be like, "Oh, that ain't true." You got to realize it is a problem and then address it accordingly. So,
yeah, what is your infrastructure like in order to have all of these? In order to house all this meat, do
okay.
you have like a freezer room or?
So again, we didn't crawl, walk, run. We purchased a freezer container. So 40-foot shipping container. A shout out to the guys that get it from because they're just awesome. Great service, great prices. U.S.A. Containers. They're down in Smithshire, Illinois. They service all of the Midwest, about a 3-state region around Illinois. And then, so I got that. And then we had more animals, so we got a second one. And then we had even more animals, so we got a third one. So we have one freezer's pork and chicken, the other freezer's beef. The third freezer is basically overflow, so pallets of stuff go into that one. Our next step is we've found a local warehouse. I'm trying to make contacts with for Badger State Cold Storage, where you're at. It's
Mm-hmm.
awesome, great people to work with. I just would like it a little closer, so I'm trying to find something in the Quad Cities. But I'm going to pick it up from. I found a third party company that'll pick up LTL to processor, and take the pallets from my processor to the cold storage, and then I'll leave them in the cold storage until I need it and send the van down, pick up 2 pallets at a time, and come back for distribution. So it's not the most efficient system in the world, but we started out getting our animals back in a bag. So in other words, the front quarter would be in one bag, the rear quarter in another bag, and you had to sit there and sort out all the cuts into different boxes for the packing and pulling shelves. No inventory, no nothing. At least now we get them in boxes, all the same cut, the weight of the box, and the number of cuts in the box. So that's much better.
What's your marketing strategy?
So we're website and email, some social media, but work email a lot, and
How'd you
hold
build
that
the email
lever
list?
for a long time. And emails are less and less looked at all the time. So you're the guy that knows more about this stuff. Need to get to the text subscriber thing until that gets worn out. How do we accumulate the email list? We started at farmers market. Don't know if that farmers market. If they buy at a farmers market, they want to buy there. They buy online, they want to buy there. It's very hard to transition a farmers market person to online experience because typically
Hmm.
they're cash, they're EBT, or they just want to have the fun day in the sun walking their dog. And um, so I caution people about, if you want to be an online business, uh, be very cautious about the money you spend at farmers market because you've just given up your Saturdays for the rest of your life. Okay. The other thing I think we would have been far smarter to do is take the money we spend on the farmers market, which isn't, the market isn't much, but it's your time because
Yeah,
it's 9 hours market day of a for one person, and a lot of times you need more than one person, and the mileage to get there and back. So you'd be better off figuring out that dollar amount, and you'd be like, wow, that's a lot. And then you take that $700 a day or whatever it's costing you to be there, and you spend that on Google SEO, Google ads on your location to be the top performing person when it comes to grass fed beef near me, and you get registered on Eat Wild. If you do those two things, forget the market. So that's what I can tell you after 6 years of spending lots of money on markets. Because now we're in the quandary of, great, we sell $3,500 to $4,000 a weekend at the market. How do you get out of it? You can't get that
yeah,
customer to convert to home delivery because they like the market. So you're kind of, now I'm kind of stuck. It's like, yeah, we kind of make money, but it's a hassle. So we've kind of painted ourselves into a corner there. Knowing what I know today, starting over, I'd skip the market. It's
yeah.
just not the thing.
And then you're shipping all over the place.
Yeah, kind of. Shipping's not a big thing. We use Speedy. You can too.
Yeah,
Uh, that's half the price of UPS. You kind of wonder if it makes it. You never know. But they have a lot of vehicle breakdowns and stuff, but it gets there. I
yeah.
would
For
say ten
anything
percent of
heavy,
our
that's
business is Speedy.
yeah.
Not much.
So how do you source your
We need to pull that lever more in Chicago.
dry ice?
So one of our customers actually owns a welding supply company and also a dry ice supply. So we were getting that from them. However, we just don't have that much, and I was getting I was getting a great deal on the bricks of dry ice, but I had to get 200 pounds at a time, and I just didn't go through enough. So we're just doing gel packs.
Yeah,
We do gel packs with a thermaliner that we've done a bag that seals. That made a world of difference. That added a day. So we got the recyclable plastic Paraship or Parawrap, one of them two, I can't remember. Had boxes made locally, but it's recyclable cardboard paper, and then we put a plastic liner inside. Works great.
yeah. So then you're. I mean, we've dove into this. Obviously, this is what I'm most interested in. But you obviously have a lot more other acres that you're farming. Is a lot of that then going into your pig and chicken feed, your corn, soybeans, and cover crops?
So that's one of the things I'm okay. So everybody that's direct marketing, no matter what you're marketing, whether it's flour, beef, eggs, whatever, I am guilty of this. So learn from my tuition to what we call dumb butt university, okay?
Mm-hmm.
EAU. Um, the tuition I pay is that I think it has to be slaughtered on green grass. And I know that because it needs to have the highest phytonutrient content. Guess what? Consumer don't care. They just want grass fed beef.
Mm-hmm.
I want to move everything every day. That's a claim of mine. Okay. Consumer don't care. They just want it on pasture. I say I want it all made from my own homegrown non GMO corn and non GMO soybeans, which we do. But reality is, consumer don't really care. So I do a lot of things that added some extra cost, extra frustration, or extra management, and the consumer don't really care. So, you got to be careful of that. And I'm stubborn enough that I don't want to switch, right? But so just
So
a
you think
very
you
small.
think it costs you more than just to sell your grain to markets to actually then create the feed on farm?
Well, let's take the roasted soybeans thing for example. That's a problem. Now, taking corn out of the bin, running it through your grinder, no big deal. Well, soybeans, I got to line up the roaster to come, and typically I do a year's worth of roasting at a time when he comes. So you've got a couple thousand bushels of soybeans, and you got to put it in a special bin, and then you got to handle it out of that bin and transport it to the grinder, and it's just a lot of extra versus get a meal package, get soybean meal with your minerals, and add corn. Done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And roasted soybeans are there's some magic happens when you roast them, and the whole soybean issue is not as much of an issue. But reality is I'd like to get to soy free. Um, it's tough because I want to grow it. See, so then I got to start growing oats and peas and sunflowers. I don't want to get to corn free because this everybody, oh, ours is corn free, soy free. Well, that all started out in crunchy California because they don't grow grain corn in California. They grow silage corn, and it costs too much to import that. It's cheaper for them to use barley and wheat. And well, guess what? Those got gluten in it. Corn doesn't. And if you have non-GMO corn, that solves the problem. There's no BT in there for leaky gut, and there's no Roundup that's been translocated to the seed. So problem solved. Go to non-GMO corn, and then have something other than soy would be good because of the lecithin and the phytohormones associated with that. That could be challenging.
What is your strategy right now to make the commodity side of things, the corn and soy, profitable?
Hmm. Give up rental acres. How's that sound?
Yeah.
Why are we chasing our tail to pay high rents so that we can make payments on big machines? It was great when commodity prices were up. It's just where do you think it'll be long term, right? Um,
I don't know. What do you think?
you
I mean, we're not that far away from pretty good prices. It was only what 4 years
why?
ago. What was the driving what was the
Oh, I
driving
thought you
force
meant
of that?
we're not that far away from pretty good prices in the future. Well, we had
Yeah, no, no,
and
I don't
just
know
as,
about the
just as
future.
we were coming down, just as we were about to come down where we are today, war. That's what saved our butts the last time is Ukraine war. Everything popped back up, and because we were on our way down, and then the invasion of Ukraine. Um, I don't know. You tell me what do you do with 30% of the corn acres when that goes to ethanol? That's just the ethanol portion, not the feed portion. 10% of the ethanol goes to feed animals. What do you do about that? What do you do about the fact that DDG is very causes a lot of inflammatory compounds in the animals that eat it? What if Maha movement gets hold and they find out that wow, that's really screwing up our omega 6 3 ratio with DDGs? You're looking at 30 million acres of corn that all of a sudden becomes a little less useful. You know, what gets substituted there? Um, there's a lot of reason um, to think that commodity prices may not be as stellar as what they were because all the chemical companies, fertilizer companies, all came up in their price points and they all like those higher margins. And then this year, guess what? Did nitrogen go down this year because commodity prices went down? Oh no, it went up because 12 plants in the Midwest that make nitrogen all decided to have maintenance this year. Okay. And what a bunch of crap. They're just driving the price up. And um, it's annoying. So I think long term profitability, commodity prices have always been a break even business. It comes and goes, break even. Um, and I think we gotta be a little smarter, grow food that people want, sell it to them directly, and farming the world is not. You're called a farmer whether you farm 40 acres or 4,000. You're still a farmer. So I I don't know if how we think about things is the right way.
What's one scenario you think you could do? Because what do you guys have? You have over 2,000 acres you own.
We got 2,800. Half of it we own, half of it we lease. Um,
Okay, so
area,
on
let's walk.
1,400.
Okay, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, 1,400 acres you own. What
Own or
do
making
you
payments
envision?
to the bank on. So
That's owning. That's owning.
yeah, that's mortgaging. Yeah. Um, so what if you got rid of all your rental ground, and then what if you went to all organic on 1,400 because you'd kind of have to. It takes like twice the labor to do organic. And then what if that's highly erodible land and we took everything above 5% in slope and turned it to pasture with trees on it that we would then graze our cattle on virtual fencing because they're going to be all sorts of irregular shapes across the contour of the land. So then about 700 acres of mine would be in row crops and about 700 would be in pasture. And in that pasture, we could have wood harvest, in a couple generations, or do nuts um, type harvest, mechanical harvesting there, so that we're not, we got some biodiversity, we're not causing long term erosion, because you can till 0 to 5% and not cause a tremendous amount of harm doing organic. So, I've monkeyed with that, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago on this variable farm where I essentially took, you know, had like half the field was crop and half the field was um, cover crop, and it worked. I mean, polywire don't care if it's straight, just your pride. And all of
Yeah.
our equipment has row by row shut off, so who cares? Just drive across the cover crop. It's dumb. It don't care. And just quit thinking in long straight lines. Uh, and let's and as we get to more and more autonomy, we'll get to smaller and smaller equipment platforms. Autonomy, we'll get to smaller and smaller equipment platforms between 10 and row by row, probably not, but somewhere in that 4 to 8 row range, it'll settle out at, and it'll work, and then we can do much more creative things. You have a 48 row planter. It's a little hard to plant small acreages.
Yeah. What do you? I want someone to. I want to see someone at your scale. You mentioned still raising corn on those acres. What if you did something like what Gary Zimmer does, where instead of just letting those half acres of sit idle in a year, you actually just graze it.
Well, sure. I mean, our current rotation is corn, bean, triticale for cover crop seed, then summer covers that we graze.
Yeah.
So we're doing that, or summer covers that we hay.
But what is your hedge against corn? If you think corn is in danger, what do you think is the crop that you could grow?
Um, I think your input prices will come down. It's never going to be glorious like it was for 2 or 3 years there. Um, the One of the things that I'm kind of concerned about is we have to get, as the world becomes more protein hungry, we keep growing more soybeans. What soybeans do to the soil is not a great thing. Um,
Yeah.
we somehow, I don't know the answer to that, but the other thing is too is why not corn and silage and beef cattle in a barn? You don't have to be all grass fed. Do a bed pack barn, spread it back out. Have have
Yeah.
have diversity, because not everybody wants grass fed beef. Some people want corn fed beef. Great, give it to them. Have to be a different
Have you
brand, but
have you thought about would it though? Like, why wouldn't you be able to take your 700 pound grass animals, and instead of giving them hay all winter, why wouldn't you could just try to finish them out before the next spring?
Too complicated for a person to understand. But I think you'd do that, right? So you could do that, and then you'd sell that as Taylor's Select Beef, right? Or Taylor's Prime Beef. There we go. That's the corn fed that was, and because feeding corn silage in a bed pack barn over winter, not dealing with the mud season.
I
If
know,
I could
yeah,
get
it's
December in a barn and I get March in a barn, it would be better for the animal, and they would be better for me, gaining better and such. But why couldn't you do that haylage? You know,
yeah,
I think
yeah.
you could do haylage and still keep grass fed, and then have a barn, but then give them an access pasture. So if they want to go out and mud it up, hey, so be it. Let them mud it up. But everybody in regenerative is all like, "Oh, you don't want to own a tractor. Oh, you don't want to own a manure spreader." Oh, I don't know where that camp comes from. There's a camp that says you don't want to own any equipment. Another camp, oh, you don't want to put any inputs in. Okay, the goal is to be sustainable and profitable. It's
Hmm.
not to not own a tractor. I mean, come on, people. Um, if it makes sense, and makes things better, then do it.
Hey, eco farmers, this is Taylor Henry with Acres USA. I hope you enjoy this podcast as much as I enjoy interviewing these folks. If you're serious about regenerative agriculture, I've got an incredible resource you need to check out: the Acres USA membership. You farm in the physical world, and you deserve a physical printed magazine to match. Since 1971, Acres USA magazine has been the leading voice in ecological agriculture, delivering the best insights from regenerative farmers, agronomists, and researchers to help you farm profitably without toxic chemicals. Our membership included physical and digital copies of the magazine each month of the year, which has always been a standard for Acres USA, but we wanted to over-deliver on content. When I acquired this business, I was happy to find that we had years of audio files from presentations at our annual EcoAg conference. And guess what? They were hiding. Well, not anymore. We developed this membership portal that gives you access to the recordings from farmers like Gabe Brown, Gary Zimmer, Joel Salatin, and Mark Shepard. We also include recordings of private events. Finally, if you are like me and you like listening to content, we are now producing a membership-only podcast of each issue of the magazine, so you can consume each article while you're out in the field. To make things even sweeter, you'll get discounts on books, workshops, and events to keep expanding your knowledge. So are you ready to take your farming to the next level? Join today for a ridiculously low price at eco-farming.com, or see details in the notes. My dream is the next farm I'd like to buy is a old dairy farm with a freestyle barn, because I
Yeah.
would love to be able to have that for the exact times that you talk about, those muddy months.
Yeah. Freestall barns, saying an abandoned freestall barn wasn't much of a thing until recently. So, um, but
Well,
yeah,
we're in a big
even an
area
old
for it too.
stanchion barn can be converted and work for them.
Yeah. Well, I just like those. I like those big, wide open. I mean, you get all the
Sure.
crap out of the middle of it, put
Yep.
flat load of concrete on it. But
Yep.
yeah, I think we're in line on a lot of things, Monty.
Uh-oh, that's scary. That hey, if the two of us agree on something, one of us isn't needed. So,
Yeah.
but no, I,
All
I
right.
think developing alternative markets, it's just like a processing. Uh, Raising cattle's one thing, selling beef's another. It's a processing step. Raising corn's one thing, selling hominy, grits, flour, starch is a processing step. Why as farmers do we not do the processing step? Why have we done less and less the processing step? Like my dad said, when he was a kid, everything that they sold walked off the farm. Okay, well, you were a corn processor, you were an oats processor, you were an alfalfa processor. You just process it through a four-legged critter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you raised its value as it went. So how do we get a control of that processing step and get closer to the end use? Something we have to constantly think about. One other thing I want to throw in too is, of the 5 soil health principles, the thing that I think is the hardest is not animal integration. You know, no till, minimum disturbance, pretty easy. Growing a cover crop, yep, pretty easy. Maximizing diversity, we're going to come back to that. Having living root all the time, yep, that's pretty easy. Integrating livestock requires a mindset, but the technology is better and better all the time, especially with virtual collars like no fence. All that stuff is a lot easier. Diversification, that's the hardest thing, especially in the corn belt. Um, having that market, the processing to be diversified, um, that's a problem. And
Do you ever see a way that we could get better markets for rye, oats, these smaller grains that seem to be, make a little bit more sense to grow?
um, well, I'm growing and selling for seed. But that can only do so many people, right? Um, I don't know. As far as they're not as
Is that
feed,
profitable when you raise the triticale and then sell it as seed? Is that pretty profitable?
better than raising wheat,
Yeah.
better than raising rye, because rye in our environment doesn't yield very much. You know, triticale will yield twice as much. You'll be in the 65 range versus the 30 range. Wheat will be in the 100 range, but wheat you're going to get um, minimal price for, and they'll try to dock you anytime they can or reject you anytime they can. Our triticale we grew last year 99.3% germ, no fungicides, just one foliar flag leaf. That was it, and I was pretty impressed with that. And so we're pushing forward, and we did a little bit, did 60 acres last year. It worked. So now this year we're doing 225. So oh yeah, I'll put that down for you. You need 5 totes of triticale. I'll put that on your order too. We'll deliver that with the cattle and the feeder pigs.
I'll grow some.
There you go. But no, I think yeah, we just got to be always looking for those opportunities. The easy way is the least profitable way.
Yeah. What's the how's it been working with these collars, and what's some of the pros and cons to it? Is it easier than you thought?
Okay, fun story. When we got the collars, we were working with the company out of Norway. Got the opportunity to be the first cattle herd in the U.S. to have them on. We put them on the end of July, and like 2 weeks later was our concert with the cows. And the CEO, the founder, and the North American direct sales director from Norway are all coming to our concert with the cows to see this. So we had like 2 weeks to get the herd trained to these collars. And then for the concert, we had them on complete wireless behind the stage during the concert. So there's like 300 customers, the stage, and the cows behind. So it worked. Nobody got trampled. Everything was great. So I was amazed at how quickly they could adapt. The other thing I was amazed about is what you can do with it that you would not have ever considered prior to having them. So once you have them, you're like, huh, I can fence around, I can fence right through this wash that I couldn't before, or I can cut them off at the pond, where before I would have had, there's no way you could run a poly wire across the pond. Or I can give them access to the pond bank for a couple hours, and then I can back it off because I don't want a huge impact next to a stream or a pond. Um, I can exclude around trees I've planted in the bull pasture. Don't rub on the tree. Put an exclusion zone. Just all sorts of these little things, and send them through timber and puckle brush in seconds versus getting out the chainsaw and putting a polywire. Um, so there's just unbelievable things, and the whole thing. It impresses me that they do down in Henrietta there, Birdwell and Clark, where he's moving those cows 6, 7, 8 times a day. Like that guy, Emery, is amazing that he does that. But with this now, with your phone, you can just sit there and you can advance it multiple times a day. It's absolutely amazing. The other thing I like that I didn't think we'd get is we got like creep grazing out of the calves. So the calves would walk forward ahead of the moms. Moms were held back by virtual. The calves actually weaned a little bit heavier, about 30 pounds. And then the other thing that we got out of it is when I run the group together, I can have the front paddock. I can let the fats too. And then I have a paddock right behind where the cows are at. But I can have the cows on virtual and I can put the fats on polywire, and it'll actually restrict the cows from going into the newest forage. Works great. So the little baby calves and the yearlings can be ahead, and the cows can be behind, but they're both sharing the same water resource in the lagging paddock. So you can
Yeah, that's pretty
essentially
awesome.
sort. And I told Megan at no offense, said, "Hey, this is what I want to do." I said, we haven't tested that. We can't recommend that you do that." I said, "Watch me." So we did it and worked great. I mean, they will, even though there's that herd instinct to stay together, they can still see each other. The virtual stops the cows, but I think that's a great testament to cow people to understand how that works. It's really effective.
Yeah, well, you just sold me on it.
I'm
How do you? Okay, so obviously the big thing. I mean, I think it's an amazing technology. I think with you know what data it's going to be able to get over time. You know, anything anything in tech right now is going to get boosted by AI, and what you're going to be able to get from these are going to be amazing. But it comes down to the cost, right? Like cost has improved a lot, and usually tech gets cheaper over time. But what do you think of, like, how do you justify it? I guess.
It's crazy expensive. If you're just going to do set stock and change nothing, save your dollars. If you're on daily moves and maybe want to be, do some that herd sorting like I was talking about, or you want to get to multiple times a day, there's where the money's at. Because then you can improve your average daily gain 10, 20% because you're getting better forage utilization and time of day moves and all that. And there's something nice to say when it's a blizzard outside. Um, you can look on your phone at 11 o'clock at night and say, "Oh, yep, they're all in the paddock," right? And not
Yeah, yeah, for
because
sure. That
I've
would
done
be.
this deal before. True story. Take the truck out to go make sure everybody's in. Wind's blowing, drifts are 3 feet deep. On my way back, get stuck. Okay, go get the tractor, and by about 2 a.m., I'm back to the house. So um, I enjoy that part of it, and it's also nice to get an alert on your phone instead of a call from the sheriff that your cows are out. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it, especially in our situation with lease ground, and we have one farm that's 25 minutes away. That is, that would be. I'd sleep a lot better at
and
night.
and all the fences are in great shape everywhere you go, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
No, I was impressed when I went over to Norway to meet Oscar, the founder. He came to me. I thought I ought to go to him, and it was a great way to take my wife for our anniversary, and still call it a business trip. So we went over there, and he actually had a group of goats in the downtown area of this little town. It was on a special little like estuary. There's certain endangered plants that were growing, but they were using the goats. He had about 15 of them right in downtown, eating on this estuary right on a fjord. And towns all around, and there is no fence because they are not allowed to put anything in the ground. So he's doing that, and he's grazing these mountains that go kind of straight up. It's unbelievable. Now,
yeah,
I'm excited about you mentioned AI. My future hope for all of the virtual fencing is we can use imagery in order to assess the total quantity and quality of forage that you have access to. Self determine the paddocks and do the planning. Because, I mean, there's 70-year-olds will tell you they've been doing it all their life. They're like, yeah, I'm getting pretty good at it now. And it's like, we don't have time to wait that long. We need to maximize this opportunity. So I think you can take imagery, AI, and automatically prescribe the paddocks and exclude areas that were maybe overgrazed before or weak areas. And because, yeah, we give them 5 acres every day. Some it's too much, some it's too little. You never know ahead of time. And I
right.
think there's a lot of hope there.
I agree. I mean, I'm excited for them. I think we need to at least get a few of them to test them out. But it's it's definitely an investment, and farming, everyone's making so much that it should be easy.
Now, the cattle guys shouldn't be complaining right now. So it
I'm
is,
not complaining. I'm just complaining about having to buy them.
it is expensive. That's all there is to it. And the hardware is, just kind of constrained by the fact that it's a battery, right? And some solar panels. I'm sure over time that will go down like everything does, like you said. But is it going to be half price? iPhones have never gone down. They've just gotten more features over time. Um, I don't I don't anticipate it getting dramatically cheaper.
Well, I could see the collars go down, but the subscription going up if they add more tech to the platform.
I do know that they have, lameness ability, pregnancy ability. They're going to calve all those movement related things are
Because if I
built
were
into
them,
it.
I mean that's the from a business perspective, I would want as many people on a subscription as possible. So like in the hunting world, a company called Tacticam, they were a like a little camera company. You could attach a camera onto your gun and take video of your hunts. Well, they pivoted into trail cameras, cell cameras, and they were selling them for dirt cheap. But then you get into their subscription, and it's like all it was a big play just to have a giant subscription model.
Yeah. It's the whole HP printer, right? Sell the
Yeah,
printer for nothing and charge way too much for the cartridges.
I mean I don't make sense
Yeah.
as
Yep.
long as I mean that's a service. But I would want to get them in as many people's hands as possible.
Yeah. That is true. Well,
All right, Monty. Anything else you want to mention?
we've talked a lot of livestock. What is it about it? I tell you what, row crop farmer, agronomist, and done all this work, but there's just something about the livestock and connecting with people that is just so much more interesting. Maybe it's because it's the newest thing. I don't know, but it's just
Well, is it the newest
fascinating
thing? Livestock,
for
we go
me.
back pretty long ways.
I mean,
Yeah,
for me,
yeah,
business wise, that's the newest. California Ag Solutions, kind of old hat. ASN, yep, been doing that. Farm, we're doing some new things and trying to post some of those things that we're doing out there for people. And but it's just something about the livestock. And one of the here's another final thing on the no fence that's really fun is my wife and I do enjoy drinking wine, and we do enjoy going out to the pasture and having a bottle of wine with the cattle. So
yeah.
prior to this was quite a process. You'd go through this gate and drop that and put the gate back up, go through this poly wire to get to that paddock, then the next poly wire. And after 3 or 4 of these to get out there just to enjoy your wine, and then 3 or 4 to come home, it wasn't so much fun. But now with no fence, so you can just drive right up to them, put your lawn chairs out, you're all set.
That is my drink of choice for that is bourbon. I think it's I think there's something to hearing them eat grass and rip grass. I think it's like a does something to your brain. It's meditative.
There you go.
That's probably
There's what you
you get
do.
captured by it.
Record a cow eating grass and sell that as a meditation tape instead of waves on the ocean or whatever.
That's a good idea.
Oh, I think we've probably bored everybody to death by now. What do you think?
I don't think so. I'm not
Oh,
bored,
okay.
but
Okay, that's good.
anything else? Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up?
Oh, there's probably always something, but the biggest thing is that don't be afraid to do something different. If anything, you should be afraid of doing the same thing all the time. Because if you're doing the same thing all the time, you're not making progress. I mean, we're not driving steam engine tractors anymore. We're not running horses to plow the fields. We have made change, and change is good. And I realize that sometimes we're pretty resistant to that, and we're not very open minded. But get to events, read magazines like Acres, and go to their amazing bookstore. It's got anything you could ever want to know. And talk to people, interact in real meaningful ways. Get in your truck or car, go to their field, see what's going on. Just go buy them a lunch and say, "Hey, show me what you're doing." Just learn, and think about how you can be better and not be afraid to do things different. So, um, I really hope long term that my impact is that I can say I moved the needle positively on soil health. It gets frustrating when I see dust storms coming out of central Illinois and I see the massive amount of tillage we're doing, and it seems like tillage is increasing. Um, it's just it gets disheartening. It really does, Taylor. And there's a lot of a lot of good people doing good things, but we got to have everyone not going backwards at the same time. So how can we make a bigger impact on bigger acres? Is a question I'm always asking, and I hope that your team, your mission, and your events are certainly a part of that. And I thank you for all the work that you're doing in that regard.
I appreciate it. I thank you too. Keep up, keep doing what you're doing. Lastly, what are you excited about for Jason's event? He's doing some wild stuff over there. So, what do you think?
Well, I'm not too sure about the band. Okay, I'm a little more a classical music kind of guy, so we'll see. We'll see there. But
Why? What is this? Why I don't even know what type of genre it is.
I don't know either. I
Yeah.
who knows? But it's good to see. When you get Zach and Jason together, that's a lot of fun. Them two guys feed off each other really well, and it's fun to see his mind. Jason definitely thinks differently than the rest of us, and he can see things in multiple dimensions, and he's got a real gift for that. The hardest thing is just trying to keep up with him, right? I mean, he is just full on out there, is trying to understand you. He's the kind of guy you want to be around a lot, and this is an opportunity to be around him, get there and be around him and see what it is, and see this plant effect when he cuts the wheat and how it grows, and this spacing thing that he talks about, and his Fibonacci sequence and everything else. So it's an interesting thing.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you there, and good luck with everything else you're doing. Appreciate you joining us today.
Well, very good, Taylor. Keep up the good work, you too.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Acres USA podcast, a podcast production of Acres USA. Find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, and other popular podcast platforms. Acres USA is North America's oldest publisher on production-scale organic and regenerative farming. For more than 50 years, our mission has been to help farmers, ranchers, and market gardeners grow food profitably, regeneratively, and with nature in mind. Find our books and other Acres USA media and learn about Acres USA events at acresusa.com. Read our online magazine at members.acresusa.com, and we'd like to thank Acres USA staff for their contributions to producing this podcast. This episode was edited and engineered by Weston Larson of Acres USA. We're grateful to our guests for taking the time to talk with us about their experience.